All right, we're live again from Studio Jakarta EE, and today with me, I'm super happy to invite Jurgen Holler from Spring. And Jurgen, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm actually wearing my Spring T-shirt.
Wait, I haven't. No,
So,
haven't.
so so here's a challenge for you. On the next Spring one, you should wear a Jakarta EE T-shirt. I'll send you one.
And yeah, it might be a virtual event again like this one, right? But yeah, sounds like a deal.
Yeah. So, well, just introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
So, hello everyone. My pleasure to be here for a start. Thanks for having me. I'm Jürgen. I have been doing the Spring framework business for a long time. I've been co-founding the project a long time ago, back in 2003, and have been serving as the project lead for the Spring Framework open source project, what we call the core project.
Yeah.
Pretty large core project, but I've been serving as the project lead of this for the longest time. I always have to check the calendar. Is it now 16, 17 years and counting? Something like this, right?
Yeah, I guess you
doing strategic planning for Spring Framework, for the Spring Framework project. I'm also the release manager and the strategic planner behind it.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I'm pretty sure you choked on your food the day you heard we were changing the JavaX namespace.
May I say it's by far my favorite topic, the namespace change. Now, of course, it's been talked about for a long time, right? So it's been up in the air for so long, whether it's going to be a piecemeal or a big bang. And I was also somewhat familiar with the initial discussions, how we got there. So yeah, it's history at this point, right? But obviously, from a Spring perspective, we are very invested into certain API namespaces, the Servlet API, Java Persistence API, Bean Validation, everything that a typical Spring application integrates with in terms of its runtime environment. So it obviously is a big deal. And in the Java space, on the Java virtual machine, unfortunately, namespace changes are a little hard to deal with, right? It's a totally binary incompatible change. You can barely do anything about it. You really have to just jump over and move on with a new namespace at some point. And I guess that's exactly where we're in now. So it's up now, right?
Yeah, as far as and it is, and the message we are going with is that if you are out there and think that this doesn't affect you because you're not using Jakarta EE technologies, then well, welcome. You're using Spring Framework, and it will affect you. But I guess you are in sort of a lucky position since you're having an abstraction layer on top of these APIs in most cases.
In some ways, right? We're a little in between. In a typical Spring application code base, as an application developer, the code you're writing, you wouldn't really touch the JavaX namespace all that often because you're primarily working with the Spring programming model. In some more advanced scenarios or in customizations of your runtime setup, you might directly interact with, say, a servlet request or a servlet response. But the servlet API is pretty much underneath your covers, underneath the covers of your Spring app. With other APIs, other annotation-based models, JPA, Bean Validation, you would actually use those pretty directly, right? Spring would do the integration for you, the runtime setup for you, but what you're programming against, the annotations that you're declaring, are actually the JPA and Bean Validation annotations. So there you are.
You are a
dependency on the JavaX.persistence and JavaX.validation namespaces at this point. So there's only one way of moving on from here to the Jakarta namespace, and that is basically a new generation of Spring, and also, of course, a new generation of Spring applications. which for these purposes, for beam validation, for JPA, for some others, would use the Jakarta namespace, the equivalence of the APIs. It's at this very point, not what you're doing, right? In the Spring Framework 5.3.x line, it's JavaX namespaces for those particular places. It's also JavaX namespaces for the Spring SPIs, for the integration points with the runtime environment. So there's no way out. As a current Spring Framework 5.3x user or Spring Boot 2.x user, you're bound to the JavaX namespaces, and you will be in that generation. We're not going to do anything within these lines, right? Those lines are Java E7, 8 baselines, and you're supposed to use a preferably Java E8 based runtime environment. Say a Tomcat 9, a Jetty 10, right? All of those would still be perfect choices, or will be in the case of Jetty 10. It's just released, right? So it will be a combination that you can still use, but you have to make sure that for the pieces that you integrate with there, for the providers that you choose in combination with your Spring application, that you choose JavaX namespace versions of those providers, right? Of Hibernate ORM, of Hibernate Validator, of Tomcat, of Jetty, of anything else you might be using.
Yeah, so I guess you are also kind of interested in when will Tomcat 10 and Jetty 11 be available?
Yeah, I mean, Jetty 11 is not kind of co-managed now with Jetty 10, so it's effectively out, right? It's you can choose between Jetty 10 and 11. You get the same feature set, just a different namespace for the servlet API. And Tomcat 9 and 10, last time I checked, at least they were pretty close to that arrangement. Also not differing much in terms of the internals, pretty much co-managed, same changes, same fixes applied to both branches. Tomcat 9 being JavaX namespaced, Tomcat 10 being Jakarta namespaced. And for current Spring applications and current Spring Boot applications, you have to choose the JavaX namespace like Tomcat 9 or Jetty 10. But you get basically all the runtime benefits because they don't differ. So Tomcat 10 or Jetty 11 wouldn't actually buy you any provider level benefits. They would literally pretty much only give you the new namespace. That's the point, right? And that's also the point of Jakarta EE9, as far as I understand.
Yes, it is.
That's the point, basically. There's APIs in a new namespace with very mild benefits. Further benefits are yet to come from here, from where we are.
Definitely,
and that's something we're very interested in.
Yeah,
what's next?
And that brings us to when can we expect then Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3, I guess.
So it would. If we don't change our mind, those will be the version numbers attached. Yeah, we are planning for Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3. We don't have a fixed target time frame yet because it's they are driven by several forces. The whole static image topic, GraalVM native images, Project Layton, Loom integration. There are quite a few topics out there that are of strategic relevance and that we would like to pick up as kind of essential pillars of what Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3 will be. A move to the Jakarta namespace is also at this point, a fixed part of it, right? So unless something earth-shattering happens, Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3 will be using the Jakarta namespace, the servlet API, persistence API, beam validation API, and so forth. We do need all the providers out there, the common ones, to be available in Jakarta namespace versions, right? We need Hibernate ORM, which at this point, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have a communicated plan for when a Jakarta namespace version will be available. We have Tomcat 10, more or less, or GA already. We have Jetty 11. So the essential pieces are already out there. Hibernate Validator 7 will be there. So there's not that much to wait for. Actually, Hibernate ORM might be the most important one that needs to be part of this plan.
Unless you can use Eclipse Link.
We're going to ship it. Pardon? I was missing.
Unless you can go with Eclipse Link as a replacement for Hibernate.
Yeah, course, we let people choose anyway, but we also have pretty direct Hibernate support, right? We have native Hibernate session support, and we have Hibernate extended JPA support with Hibernate benefits. We'd like to carry those over.
Yes.
So we totally know that in order for a Jakarta namespace Spring generation to be successful, the rest of the ecosystem needs to move along. So if there's no Hibernate ORM, or if there wouldn't be a Tomcat or a Jetty, basically we can't see our audience moving over. And we want to provide them with an upgrade path that is actually worth taking, right, at the right time, which is part of the time frame question. When is the right time? It's not, for us, it's not the availability of the APIs, it's the availability of the providers in generally available versions, in production versions that we can pick up. In particular for Spring Boot 3, we need to bring in, we are doing dependency management for those providers, so we need to bring in a complete set of providers that work in the given arrangement. So at this point, this is, I would say, at least, we're talking about late next year as a rough guidance, right? But it's hard to tell. We might, if there are forces that allow us to release a little earlier than planned, we will take that opportunity. If there's something to wait for, something very strategically important to wait for, particular OpenJDK generation, this might also influence the plan. But the good thing is we're going to get JDK 17 with the assumption that it's going to be a long-term support release again in September next year. So that is also an important part of the plan, and certainly something we're waiting for, because everything that is coming together there is of total importance to our audience, right? We're currently supporting basically every JDK up from 8 and upwards, but we'd really like to move on from the current JDK 8 baseline to something higher. So and JDK 17 is a very important part of this, and provides a lot of things worth integrating with. Yeah, those are the things that need to come together. JDK 17 should be out before Spring Framework 6, and Boot 3 will go live. Yeah, we'll see what's happening. But I'm sure that with the pace that this industry, the Java industry, had in the past couple of years, and this year still, we will see a lot happening next year in 2021. So I'm looking forward to seeing it coming together.
Yeah. And I have a couple of questions here from the audience. We have 1 minute left, so so there's one question: how many JSRs that I guess they mean Pivotal or VMware participated in, except for batch processing? I'll kind of turn that question into how many Jakarta EE specifications are you planning on participating?
Yeah, well, quite a few. Actually, I would have to look it up specifically, but on the expert groups, we were definitely on Java persistence, quite active, sort of engaged with beam validation, even if not immediately in the expert group. So there's quite a few that we have contributed to in some form, right? And in particular, a lot of the providers, we are pretty active in contributing to the reference implementation or the common providers of quite a few of those APIs out there. So we are very much connected to the ecosystem out there that is now going to move on to Jakarta APIs, right? Jakarta namespace APIs, and this is also part of what we intend to move on with, right? We not only want to have been involved in some JSRs in the past somewhere, we also want to be involved in where those Jakarta namespace APIs and where they are going, right? The next steps after Jakarta EE9 are almost more important for us than the namespace question. There's always room for improvement. I would argue in the case of the Java Persistence API, the Jakarta Persistence API, and a few others, there's actually a backlog of things that should have happened for many years already. So we're looking forward to helping out in processing that backlog and bringing the APIs up to date with where they really should be in 2021 and onwards.
Yeah, that sounds very promising, and I'm super happy to have had you here. We should have had much more time, maybe an hour, but we'll
but happy to have
than nothing. So I thank you very much for joining us, and yeah, and the next session up is Adam Bean. So if you want to stick around and look at that, we'll be pulled over there. And so thank you very much for joining us, and looking forward to seeing you on the conference in the future. Yeah, so I told them to wrap it up and pull us over. So thank you very much. And
I doing those interviews in a sequence, right off back to back here?
Yeah, it's going back for 13 hours. Yeah. we're a bit over halfway, so we're good to go.
Yeah, okay, well.
Yeah. So the other section is starting now, I see. So we can wrap it up here.
All right. So it's I'm not familiar with Crowdcast. So we're basically in the same session where Adam will join us here.
No, you would. You can see on the top screen you have schedule 17 out of 25. You can select there and go to the next session.
We're in 17, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone has a I get it.
Yeah. Okay, so he started there. So thank you very much, and see you again later.
Yeah.